I always wanted to solve really big problems inside a company. So I had less care about the title, less care about the pay, less care about how many people worked for me. I cared about what was the number one problem, what was the biggest problem in the company? Could I solve that problem? Knowing that you're working on something that's really important to the company's overall success or failure, if you continue to put yourself in that seat, I think you'll have a really, really robust career.
Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast, where I bring you the best and the brightest in the world of business, marketing, and personal growth to help you harness your inner tenacity and drive your career forward. My guest today on the podcast is an old friend, a dear friend, Behr, the CEO of Fountain, the company transforming the hiring process for hourly workers. Sean and the team have helped more than 80 million applicants in 75 countries at places like Stitch Fix, Sweetgreen, and GoPuff. And Fountain has raised $225 million to date, most recently through $100 million Series C last June. Congrats on that. And Sean joined Fountain as the CEO in 2020 after founding fleet infrastructure platform Stratum and served as SVP at Adapt TV through its acquisition by AOL. People still remember AOL? There's a lot of stories there. We're going to unpack that. He has a wealth of wisdom. He's been around the block, and he's an awesome guy. So let's get to it. Sean, welcome to the podcast.
Adam, I feel very, very official. I love talking to you, but now I'm talking to you officially. So it's always fun to talk.
And now it is official. And first and foremost, I just want to give a big shout out and thank you to Fountain for being a tremendous sponsor and partner of the show, a friend of this show. You know, I've worked with a lot of other companies, and it's one thing just to slap your name onto a show, but it's another thing to really be a partner. And I think that's kind of a concept that I always kind of go with too. Whenever I'm working with somebody, I want to be seen as a partner and not a vendor. And I think that kind of transcends all of business, right? Is that the approach that you take when building and managing teams and working with other companies?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the great things about our partnership is it it's foundational to what we are doing. I think especially if you've been around in this business long enough, right? You know, there's so much of it that's transactional, and where the real growth happens is when it moves from transactional to real partnership. And I think I've been listening to some of the conversations you've had, and they're all incredible. Those are conversations and voices and stories and pearls and wisdom and nuggets that I've really enjoyed listening to. And I think Fountainers around the world would feel the same way about that. So we appreciate you, and I feel humbled
Thank
that
you.
I made the cut to sit on the hot seat and try to share some of the things that I've learned over my journey, and obviously I'm still learning and growing and always trying to get better. So yeah, really thrilled to be here and really thrilled to get to talk to you.
Well, thank you. We tried to jam this in at the big national conference that should be unsaid, like the name that should not be said. We tried to jam it in there, and you know what? Sometimes it's better to take a break and do it the right way, so you could have the right atmosphere and the ability to kind of get into it a little bit. But we were saying before, though, like the whole premise. I'm giving a little inside baseball to the audience there. When I do these events with partners, it's really important and critical that the guests you're having they're representing your partner and your sponsor Fountain, and you want to shine a good light on them, and you want to bring thought leadership because it's all about attachment. You look at folks like Tim Sackett and Steve Brown and Jocelyn King and Lauren Russell, like they're just like good folks that are in the business, and it's identification, right? It's like association with a good brand. So let's pause on that for a second. I want to hit the rewind button. I want to do This Is Your Life, Steve. Sean, sorry, that's not you. We're Sean. You're not Steve. You have an interesting background, right? Started as a product guy. You were in the early days of the tech bubble in 2K. Let's talk about that because I think people need a history lesson. Like
Yeah.
this was new. This internet thing was new. How hard was it to convince people to shop and put their credit cards on a computer versus going to the store? Like the seismic
Yeah.
shift.
Seismic shift. The first company, shopping.com, again, was this early, web one, you could call it, shopping company. And it was really built around the idea that people were going to move dramatically to using the internet as a resource to find what to buy and where to buy it. And now that's like second nature to you and the audience, right?
all the time.
In fact, I would argue that it's probably flipped. It's almost all of your research happens, on a browser or on your
Hmm.
phone. Back then, 90% of what you did, you researched offline, and 100% of what you bought, or 99% of what you bought, was offline. And so we came up with this crazy thing that people were going to buy lots and lots of things online. And at the time, the only thing that really people bought online was books.
Important.
Amazon had sort of had moved into the books category, and I remember with interest when they moved into CDs. So that kind of dates me right there, right? When CDs were popular. But Adam,
Yeah,
CDs
I
are going to
remember.
come back. Believe me, someday.
I don't think they are.
Gen 2 or 10 years from now, it's going to be cool to own CDs
Well,
again.
vinyl's cool, right? Like, no,
Vinyl's
vinyl's cool because
cool.
I get it. But vinyl's cool. Vinyl
Cool.
is physically
CDs are never
cool.
coming back, but maybe.
Maybe the laser disc. Maybe the laser disc will come back. Who knows?
That's right. But anyway, we were building a product for a market that was developing. And I always knew I wanted to be a CEO in the tech space. And frankly, product is, I think, one of those foundational areas that you really need to understand. So much of what we do is product driven. And so to try again, there are CEOs who have done it, who have avoided being anywhere around the product and are mostly go to market focused. But I think really talented CEOs have a deep connection on how you build product, what you choose to build, what you choose not to build, before you even begin to sell that product. So I was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to work with great people building really great products in the e-commerce space. And from there, I moved into other areas, but product was kind of one of my core foundational learning experiences in my career.
Well, let's talk about those early days of product, right? There was a lot of building the airplane as we fly it, which we're doing around now, or as the kids say, F around and find out. But you think back to those early days at shopping.com, moving fast, experimenting, ideating. But what was one of those hard lessons learned the hard way that, like, you think about it now where you are, and you're like, thank God I went through that experience. Thank God I got those battle scars and calluses in the world of product development and learning.
Yeah, I mean, how much time do we have? Because there's so
Yeah.
many battle scars. But again, as you said, building anything in a new space leads to lots and lots of learning and lots of growth and lots of mistakes and lots of challenges. One of the things I can tell you is like we spent so much time trying to build, rebuild, and build and rebuild products that met the needs of our customers. Um, I would say the big transition or the big difference between now and then was the amount of time we spent writing, documenting. Today, Figma has just transformed the
So
ability
quick.
to build product. Before Figma, you would write down, there should be a box where people type their email address in. If
Hmm.
someone types in something without an at symbol, we should put up an error message that says blank. Now you do all of that in Figma. I would say from a learning perspective, I think the thing I learned really most importantly at shopping.com was if you are super proud of the product that you've released in as a V1, you probably took too long. And it's a lesson that I've carried through even today here at Fountain. We learn more in the first couple of hours of a real customer using our product than we do in the first couple of months of building the product. And so the quicker you can get your product out in front of a real user, meaning somebody who doesn't work at your company,
They don't blinders
the
on.
correct. They're the ones that tell you this is totally unneeded. This is absolutely needed. I wish it did this. I wish it did that. Those are things that if you were just sitting around ideating by yourself, it would take you months to get to those insights. And then you put it in front of the customer, and in a couple of hours, you get these rich,
Real life feedback.
yeah, it's speed to market is the most critical thing in the world of product.
And that's a partnership too with your clients because they feel comfortable giving you that feedback because they want the best product for them, for you, and it's a team effort. I want to double back on something you said a few minutes ago, Sean. You said early on, even in shopping.com, that you wanted to be a product CEO. Did you have that even before that, when you were younger, when you came out of school? Did you knew you wanted to be a leader within an organization? Versus, like, listen, some people excel through their career at being individual contributors. They're builders. They make shit happen. They create stuff. And other folks want to do both. They
Yeah.
want to be in that leadership role. They're visionaries too. When was that first kind of moment that path was right for you?
I think
Like that.
right at shopping.com, I knew that I wanted to be a CEO. Now it took some time. I needed to learn some things and grow and all kinds of things, but I knew then that I wanted to do it. The path I took was rather unconventional though, because rather than becoming really only a product person, after I worked in product, or it might have been reversed, I moved into sales, which you don't hear very often, right? You don't hear people going from sales to product or from product to sales. It's a very, very
Sometimes they go
different
hand in
world.
hand.
Yeah, it helped
They're
me
complementary.
incredibly, incredibly. And I think I'm a better CEO today, having done both sales and product at large organizations, because I can walk in, I can say, here's how we should build this product because I think it will address the needs of customers. And I can also say, here's how we should market and sell this product because this is how it will resonate in the market. And having those two things together. But I always knew I wanted to be a CEO. The thing that I would say that another one of those kind of things that's, you know, traveled along my career, right, is I always wanted to solve really big problems inside a company. So I had less care about the title, less care about the pay, less care about how many people worked for me. I cared about what was the number one problem, what was the biggest problem in the company? Could I solve that problem? Could I be known as somebody who solved really important challenges for the company? And I figured that the rest would take care of itself, and it has.
I love that take. And I want to keep going a little bit deeper with this experience that you had in sales. Think about the experience that you have in sales now as a CEO. You're in pitch meetings, investor meetings, and that sales mindset, which is really those fundamentals of listening to their feedback, their
Yeah.
objections, and the ability, and then being able to actually work with your sales team. And you're not just some CEO sitting there like, there's a freaking nerdy product guy. What the hell does he know about sales? You're like, no, no, no. I've been in your shoes before. And that gives you street cred with the team,
Team, yeah.
the sales folks, who are the lifeblood, man.
Yeah. Even today, I pride myself on every week being on several sales calls, first calls, really listening for those first insights, those first
Mm-hmm.
questions, those first challenges. And sometimes, by the way, they can be humbling. You talk to a customer or a prospect, and turns out they're doing a really great job, and maybe you don't have something that they need, and that's a little humbling, right? Especially if you're a product oriented CEO, to hear from a customer that you've missed with them. But I always learn something on those early sales calls. I do think it builds credibility with your sales team, right? I also pride myself on, put me on a plane and I want to go meet the customer in person,
Of
and I
course,
will
face to
sit there
face.
with them face to face. And your sales team starts to realize that my CEO isn't asking me to do anything that he or she is not willing to do themselves. You,
It's
you
got
know,
my
you want to.
back.
I want to fly to Houston, Texas, in July. you
Yeah.
know, Sounds great. You want to send me to Boston, Massachusetts in early January? Sounds
Yeah,
great.
let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah, let's so I want to talk about your specific journey to Fountain. Did they come knocking on your door, and was it like, HR tech hiring platforms within that? What was your experience prior to Fountain with
Yeah,
this world?
yeah.
When?
I What drew me in. First of all, what's interesting about me at Fountain is I was an investor in the company. So I was actually the first angel investor in Fountain. So I met the team when it was a very, very, very small team, and I liked what they were doing. The other thing that's interesting is I was a customer of Fountain. So
That's a big one.
so I'm a strange CEO in that I was a investor, an advisor, a friend, a customer, and a board member all before I became the CEO. So I've seen Fountain in a lot of
But you
different
also knew the
iterations.
good, the bad. You saw the good, the bad, and the ugly.
I
So
saw
so
the
let me
good
so let me
and the
so let me
ugly.
backtrack that question. Why did you invest in Fountain at first?
Yeah. I was at
That's the
my
important question because
yeah,
that kind of explains everything else. That's the
yeah.
origin story. That's your superhero origin story.
Yeah, two things that were really thing. I would say one 50,000 foot level thing, one 1,000 foot level thing. The 1,000 foot level thing was at the company that I had started called Stratum. We were hiring lots of drivers, so I knew firsthand how hard it was to hire frontline workers and to retain frontline
Very,
workers.
very different than certain blue and white collar roles.
Because I felt the pain every single day, both qualitatively felt the pain, but quantitatively, how much money I was spending to hire and retain these drivers. And along comes Fountain, and I said, "Okay, your product seems great. You can really help me. I'll buy the product, but even better, if you're looking for investors, I would love to be a small investor in the company." They came back a couple of months later, and I wound up investing in the company. And that's the 1,000 foot story, which is that I fundamentally had a problem. This company was solving it, and I went forward and became an investor. The bigger 50,000 foot level question was given my interaction with these frontline workers, I knew how important they were to my business and to thousands and thousands of businesses around the world. And when I looked at the software that was given to these workers, it generally was uninspired and it didn't solve their needs and it didn't make their life better. And so I always felt like Fountain could make a dent, which is what we talk about here, make an impact
Hmm.
in this, what I would say is an underserved, underinvested in population. Now, that makes me sound like a really good person, and hopefully I am, but it's also a really good business. I mean, for every person
Right.
that sits behind a desk, there are a ton that don't sit at a desk. They do lots of things in our economy on the front lines of our economy. And
Physical
so,
manual labor to get things and places and goods where they need to be for you.
correct. And so it's
Yeah.
a great business opportunity. But that's the story of how I got to
What?
Fountain. And it's been an incredible journey.
How do you define for everyone out there? How do you define frontline workers?
Yeah. So frontline workers for us, right, is a catch all term because we're a global company. Your audience may say, why don't we just talk about hourly workers? Well, you talk about hourly workers in Germany, they have no idea what you're talking about. That's not what we call people who
It's not
work.
the right terminology.
Right. So we use frontline because it sort of is an all encompassing global term. But generally, what we mean is people who are generally not doing a desk job. They don't open
Mhm.
Excel. They don't go on Zoom. They're driving a truck. They're working in a retail store. They're
Mhm.
working in the supply chain. They're in our nursing homes, in our hospitals. But traditionally, these are people who are deskless workers. Generally, you are having thousands of them. So it's not like you're
Mhm.
hiring one marketing person. You're hiring hundreds of warehouse workers. And the turnover of these roles is pretty high, meaning people tend to leave these roles with some frequency.
And
And
some
so
of
that's
them are
how we
seasonal.
correct. Seasonal is a perfect example of one where, they come for a while and then they depart.
Hey everybody, Adam here. Today's podcast is brought to you by the team at Fountain. Fountain is your full-service frontline workforce management platform. I have to tell you, Fountain's offerings are some of the most robust I've seen from any product in the space. They offer full solutions for recruiting, hiring, and retention. They are truly a one-stop shop focused on the frontline workforce. They also create informative content using their data. For example, they analyze a bunch of data from their fast food clients and create a trend report you can download now on their website. They also have a new ebook out called Frontline Voices. It's a lot to dive into, so certainly check it out. And you can learn more at fountain.com, linked in the show notes. Tell them Adam sent you. Thanks. So let's talk about the tech. I mean, listen, I'm a recruiter by trade, so I understand these platforms, and I kind of only see it from one viewpoint because I'm dealing with mid to high level white collar corporate type jobs too, and I take certain things for granted. But with frontline workers, there's a completely different ball game here
Yeah.
as far as what the platform needs to be because it's speed, efficiency, and you want to retain someone and make it as easy as possible for them to apply, get screened, and get the job. So walk us through kind of high level, right?
Yep.
What that kind of difference is and what Fountain's all about from a product perspective.
Yeah. I mean, I think foundationally, the world of knowledge workers you have two big assumptions with a knowledge worker. The first is that the resume or the LinkedIn profile, if we want to go that way, is mission critical to the hiring and career experience. So, many of the people in the audience, they've got their resume, and either it's
Hmm.
really up to date because they're currently in the market, or maybe they updated it last year or the year before, or something like that. Their LinkedIn profile is probably pretty well curated. It talks
Somewhat
about who
accurate,
they,
yeah.
yeah. When you move into the frontline worker world, there is no resume. There is no resume. Most frontline workers do not have a resume. Most frontline workers don't have a LinkedIn profile. When knowledge workers apply for jobs and look at things, they're typically on a laptop or a desktop computer. 90% of frontline workers do everything they're doing mobile
Yeah,
device.
it's on their phone.
And so everything you do has to come from a context of there's no resume, there's no LinkedIn profile, and there's no computer. Now help me hire and retain these workers. It's a huge, huge difference between these two worlds.
It's a
And it's one of the
cosmic
reasons
shift.
why.
Yeah.
So everything we do is mobile first. I'll give you another foundational one. If you and me communicate, obviously you and me text, but if you communicate with most people, it's over email. That's your preferred communication method. In the frontline workforce, most of these people don't have an email address with the company.
No.
They're
Text, Telegram, what's up?
text,
Yeah.
Telegram, WhatsApp. Those are the way they're communicating. And if you build your product with resume, desktop computer, email address as the foundational
It's not gonna
core
work.
components, it's not going to work. And so
No.
Fountain is a product that's all about how do you meet these workers where they are. The other aspect that's a little different, it's really important. We talk a lot about at Fountain is speed. I mean, in the world of knowledge work, being fast is important.
Mhm.
You still want to move fast and you still want to hire quickly and those things. In the world of frontline work, speed is a table stakes.
It has to be because they're also applying if I'm applying, let's just say hypothetically, I'm applying Amazon, FedEx, UPS, DHL, if I'm giving an example there. You know what? Let's give this one because when I heard this case study, I was waiting for the right time at the big national event in Chicago to talk about it. Take us through this incredible UPS case study here. And not just like we could go quick 30-second what the story is, but I want to dig into how the team pivoted, adapted, moved quickly, and created some new tech around it as well, right? Like how
Yeah.
it was innovation, and to see that from a CEO perspective, I'd love if you could share that. Spend a couple minutes here on that. I think it's
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah. I
critical.
mean, you can imagine UPS is a company that's hiring hundreds of thousands of people. And their whole business relies on these incredible workers. Like, the packages aren't going to deliver themselves, right? They don't make any
Mm-mm.
money if they don't have drivers to deliver those packages. And, over the next, well, not this month, but over the next 3 or 4 months,
It's coming.
a lot of packages are going to be delivered to a lot of people in the audience, right? And if those packages aren't there by the certain date for the certain holiday that you celebrate, there's some unhappy people in the house. And so it's a really, really critical thing. It's an area where speed and innovation are mission critical. I think if you think about our tool set, what we try to do is one, as I mentioned earlier, meet those workers where they are. But we also want to give our customers the flexibility to be innovative and to try things and to move at the speed they want to move. And so, what you'll see with UPS is these are things that sound great. They're just impossible in legacy HR technology. And so when you give them the ability to try different things, hey, I want to A/B test. What happens if I ask these questions and then what happens if I ask these different questions? What happens if I skip these questions? right? What happens if I let workers schedule the interview themselves and I tie into the calendar system? What happens to, do I get more workers that I want? Do the
Yeah.
people join me? Do they
Does it drive
in
the right metrics? Right.
correct? And what's interesting about the frontline workforce, right, is the pro and the con of this device, this wonderful device that we all hold here, right? In the old world, applying to another job meant driving to another location. That's that's what workers did. You would
Mm-hmm.
apply for a job, get back in your car, drive to the other place, ask for an application, fill it out, and you're nodding. You've done this at some point in your
Sit
life,
around the HR office, waiting in
yeah,
a waiting room
right. And now I can apply to multiple jobs in a 15-minute, break.
during
I
your
could be
lunch break. Yeah.
during my lunch break. I could be working for one company, having lunch, and I could
Mm-hmm.
apply to 4 or 5 competitive jobs on my phone. That makes the ability to meet those workers and to innovate more critical than ever. If I have one, I know you probably have a bunch of HR leaders who listen. I wish that I could tell you that there's going to be this magical day where it's going to be really easy to hire and retain frontline workers. Uh, that day's not coming. In fact, it's just going to get more difficult
It's
to
just the nature of the
hire.
beast.
Exactly. And the way to win is to have the right technology around you. And you can build it. You don't have to buy Fountain, but you could build it. But obviously, I hope you buy Fountain because we're one of the best partners for enabling you to be successful in this competitive labor market for the front line.
And it all comes down to listening to the folks that they're hiring, listening to the feedback of getting like UPS, what's worked, what's not worked.
Hmm.
Where are these people living? And then language barriers too, being able to make it easily translatable in different languages, right? The
Yeah.
world is changing and the United States is changing too, just being able to be there for them. But what was that thing that you were really proud during this whole case study of the team? What did they do that blew your socks off? Let's give some kudos to that team.
Oh, that team is incredible. That team has worked so incredibly hard. I think, I'll give you the meta point, and maybe it's another one of these like things that's sort of driven, but I think the kudos to them is really about listening. Your point about listening is such a great one. I want to kind of use it as a way to give some
Sure.
kudos to the Fountaineer team that's worked. And I would say this about Fountaineers all around the world. They're really great at listening. All right. Where I think what singles them out even more is listening for what really matters. Because listening and taking and listening and copying down what's said is great. That's important, obviously. But what really sort of separates you is when you can write down everything that the prospect or the customer says, but be able to listen for what's behind that, what really matters to them. And if you can, one, listen for what really matters to that person and then reliably deliver it. If you can listen for it and then deliver, no pun intended there since we were talking about
Right.
UPS and delivery, but if you can listen for what really matters and then deliver the answer, deliver the thing that makes the difference for them, you will have a very successful career. You'll have a very successful company. You will make lots of money or whatever is important to you. But listening for and delivering what really matters to that person is an incredible thing.
Let's layer on one other complexity to this whole case study here. Correct. Keep me straight on this. Didn't you have to turn this around in 2 days?
We had to move very, very fast. By the way, the team over there is one of the best teams in the world. And when you work with really incredible, talented leader teams, you've got to move fast because that's how fast they move. You've got to move really fast. And there are 2-day turnarounds for sure.
So what? I want to go back to leadership a little bit. We have an opportunity for a little masterclass here. Like what, as you grew into being a leader throughout your career, what was that biggest obstacle for you to get to the point of where you are now? I mean, listen, it's always constant learning, constant improving. I mean, that's the epitome of self-awareness and for me, a cornerstone of leadership. But what was that for you? What was one of those? What was that tough roadblock for you?
Yeah. I think it's a great question, Adam. I would say one, it definitely came down to listening and delivering. Like that was
Mm,
key to me. And not so, yes, we've talked a lot in this conversation around listening for customers. The thing that I got really good at is listening to what's really important to the people that were on my team. Knowing what's really important to the people that you want to hire, the people that you want to come on these crazy journeys. And by the way,
mm-hmm.
all four of, and this is my fourth company, they were all crazy journeys. One, they were uh, high likelihood of failure when they started. All, by the way, all startups are. They all took incredible highs and lows, and huge failures and huge successes, and followed by huge failures. Um, if you're not clear about what's really important to the team that wants to follow you as a leader, makes it a heck of a lot harder to get them to follow you, especially when things are tough. And there is no startup, maybe there may be some, I'm using this hyperbolically, but there's no startup where it's all great. Even the ones that we celebrate as they were incredible, there were
Right, but they're
tough
not mature. They're
days.
not mature organizations out of the gate.
Correct.
Oh,
There are challenges. And knowing what's really important to the people you want on your team is probably the biggest thing that I've learned over this thing. Now, that doesn't mean, by the way, that you can deliver all of it. There are things that people want that there's nothing I can do about. There's nothing I can do. Some people want to be really happy. I'm not in the happiness business. Never have been. I
well,
cannot make I can't make my customers happy, and I can't make people happy. I can make our customers successful, and I can make my employees rich. That I can do. Whether
that's
they're
a
happy
goal.
or not, I'll try my best, but no guarantees there.
That's a goal there. And another piece of leadership is obviously, building the right teams and hiring the right people. So I ask this question to every senior leader. By the time someone gets you in the interview process, they've been vetted for skill, experience. You're not the first person interviewing them, most likely. How do you what's some of those, Sean Bear really kind of go to questions and processes to really understand someone's character and values and that they're going to bring the right vibe and energy to the organization? How do you get there from a decision process?
Yeah, I mean, and maybe this is giving away the story a little bit. So
Well,
if
that's how we get people to listen.
if somebody's going to interview with me one day, they already know the answer now.
I have that built
Um,
into the Google search
that's right.
algorithm here. That's how I get all the SEO results.
One of the things I'm looking for, right, is um, the the ability to know, maybe the ability or the humility to know about a mistake that you've made, or a wrong choice that you've made. And I typically ask that question, like, what's something you would have done differently if you could do it now? And almost a telltale answer that's not great is kind of flipping the question and saying, well, everything is pretty good. That's not interesting to me, because I know, going back to our previous conversation, like, I know there are going to be tough times ahead. I know we're going to make mistakes. In fact, I don't really care about the mistake. I care about what we learn from that mistake.
Mm-hmm. We're
And
gonna make
so
mistakes.
somebody who is not, in fact, some of my favorite interviews is when someone tells me, uh, let me tell you how bad this went, and it was all my fault. Like, I love that person.
Are they talking
I
about the
love it.
relationship with their partner or work here, right? I mean, I got this all day. I
By
had
the
one
way,
of those.
that's
I had one of those this morning. It was bad. I
by
took
the
full
way,
responsibility on that one.
it's human, right?
Yeah, come
But
on. We're
being,
not perfect.
but when I hear from somebody who says, this company or this division that I worked at, it didn't go well, here's everyone else and why it didn't
Mm.
work, I did a really great job. I'm like, maybe. What I'm more interested in is when someone says to me, yeah, they gave me this project to build a new product. We built it. What we didn't realize was these 5 things that now seem so obvious. And I wish, and by the way, I'll even tell one on myself here, right? Like and this is my second company, I guess. We were building video ads. So, those commercials that come before
Early days of video ads.
early
Yep.
days of video ads. And our first product
Interstitial.
wasn't even an interstitial, it was an overlay. So it kind of
Oh,
appeared. And
those are fun.
those are fun. We launched it and we put it up, and we our click-through rate was incredible. Like we had a 7 or a 10% click-through rate on the ad. We thought, we're Google, right? We've got a better Google than Google. This is
We've beaten
amazing.
the Google. We've won.
We did some analysis, and we found out where were people clicking. And it turns out that 99% of the clicks were people who missed the X button to close the ad.
They were trying to get out of your stupid video.
So we thought we went from we thought we were going to be the next Google because so many people loved our ads. They wanted to click on it. We made the close button bigger.
That's a good
And
story.
our click rate fell by 99%.
Let's make
our
the
revenue.
Full screen click out. Yeah. Keep the video this small.
But I think one of the things I learned through that process was like, wow. Like, and by the way, that was not anyone else's fault. Like, I'm 100% accountable for that ad and that experience. Obviously, it's fun to laugh at now. At the time, It wasn't so funny because we didn't have a business.
Yeah.
Now, what happened is it forced us. And what we actually learned about that interstitial or that little overlay ad was, okay, nobody wants these ads. Okay. What else can we build? What else are we going to build in this world of video ads? Because we were very confident that people were going to move to a world where they weren't watching TV on their television. They were going to be watching video on other devices. It forced us to go and reinvent our company. And it wouldn't have been possible without realizing that, it turns out that little overlay ads are not popular with users. And that was nobody else's fault. That's all Sean.
But you took ownership of it here. So Sean, let's bring it home here. And what's keeping you up at night these days?
Yeah. I think besides small children, but who sometimes wake up too early or stay up too late. But
I get it.
in the business world, I would say, look, I think the good news is the world has changed over the last 24 to 36 months. Obviously, we went through a huge pandemic that reinvented, how we work and where we work and what's important to people. The second thing that's happened is we've moved from a world where startup capital to build new businesses was relatively easy to hire. It's never easy, but it was relatively easy to raise capital. And those two things have changed dramatically. If you had talked to, Sean, the CEO 7 years ago and told me that capital is going to be really, really expensive and very difficult to raise, and employees are going to want more flexibility to work wherever they want and not be in the office, the Sean of 7 years ago would not be prepared to be a leader in that environment. So the thing that kind of keeps me up at night is, how do I continue to be an effective leader of our organization? How do I build the right products? How do I hire the right people? Knowing that, the game is changing, right? The game has changed dramatically over the last 4 or 5 years and probably will continue to change. I don't know if we're going to, stay the way we are or move back to a different paradigm.
Who knows?
So, when I think about that is, I hope that my ability to lead continues to evolve and grow with where the market heads. But, I continue to lean on some great people who are around me, and doesn't really keep me up at night, but something I think a lot about.
Yep. I mean, that's eye on the prize, adapt, be nimble, right? And listen, it comes down to the fundamentals, and you have the wisdom we have to trust the wisdom that has gotten us here. And I'm also a true believer in that what has gotten us here isn't going to get us to the next place. So always,
Well
be
said.
comfortable not knowing what you don't know. And I think that's a true mark of leadership, and kudos to that. So as we head down the back nine here, Sean, what is that single greatest piece of advice that you've received throughout your career that you take action on every day? I like to call it a mantra. I like to call it kind of like that spirit animal guidance.
Yeah, I'll say two things that are, one's easy, maybe one's a little bit harder, right? So one of the things that I'm constantly focused on, I'm one of those big inbox zero kind of people. So, if
Amen. Right
you
here.
look at,
Yep.
and part of it is it's just a habit that I have, but it's also what I'm really focused on is trying to make sure that my inbox is empty. And I mean this both literally the email inbox, but also just my overall inbox, so that I can focus on the big problems. So one of the things I try to do every day is have a 2-hour block with no meetings. It's a space for me to track down the product team that I really want to talk to about how they can make more progress, or it's the opportunity for me to reach out to a customer or prospect that I've been meaning to call or email and I haven't had the chance to do it. That's a kind of a second foundational thing that I always focus on. Third one I kind of mentioned earlier, it's a little bit of a meta point, but especially in a world where capital is hard to raise, especially in a world where the world seems to be moving faster and faster, being really clear about what are the biggest problems inside the company, and am I working on those biggest problems? And I would say that regardless of what level you are as an audience member right now, knowing, am I working on one of the biggest things at my company? Whether you work at a 10,000 person company, a 1,000 person company, a 100 person company, or a 10 person company, knowing that you're working on something that's really important to the company's overall success or failure, if you continue to put yourself in that seat, I think you'll have a really, really robust career.
That is some sage advice. Listen up, folks. And last but not least, Sean, how do you define success?
Yeah, a little bit different probably than most. The way I define success for me, right, at least in the corporate world or in the business world, right, is what I've produced something that wasn't going to happen anyway. Like, there are things that are going to happen for sure. Like, it's only a matter of time. They're going to happen, right? They're just the kind of standard business as usual. This is going to happen. We're going to grow by a certain amount because that's the way the market is growing. What I'm really interested in is what wasn't going to happen unless I was involved. When I can look at something and I can say, this wasn't going to happen unless I got involved, that to me is success.
I dig it. I like it. I'm listening. What can we all do to make this a better place? That's what it's really all about here. Sean, I want to thank you so much for joining me. I want everyone to check out fountain.com. We're going to link it up in the show notes. Definitely learn more from there. Sean, anywhere else folks could connect? Where could they learn more?
Yeah, you can find us obviously on all social media and LinkedIn and X and all those things, but fountain.com is always really great. And always awesome to talk to you, Adam. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Good stuff here. And everyone, you know where to find out more. Head over to thepodcast.com. Check out all the great episodes. Definitely check out the Fountain episodes from the big national conference. They're all live. Also on YouTube. You could find us at the podcast on YouTube, at NHP Talent on Instagram. Remember, if this show resonated with you, leave a review. Rating it goes a long way. Sharing means caring. Remember, look out for yourself. Be good to yourself. Be better to others. And catch us next week for another great episode of the podcast. Take care, everybody.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search the podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.